My great friends, it is my distinct pleasure as your doctor, Dr. Remy LeBeau, that is, here in the X Lair to present you with one of the most impressive X Men villains to ever be created in one of the most X Men statues to ever be created of an X Men villain. This is Nathaniel Essex, also known as Mr. Sinister, created by Bowen Designs, of course. Who else would create something so beautiful and so perfect? This is one of the classic X-Men villains, and he's so important to the X-Men canon and just the X-Men in general, as far as like everything that's happened to them, at least the most important stories that have occurred to them in the last, like, 20, 30 years, or actually just about 25 years. Um, this is the guy driving a lot of the crazy action and the crazy drama and just everything that the X Men have had to deal with, which then makes for really great stories for us fans to read, right? So this is the guy that if you're going to make a statue of him, you need to make him perfect. And Bone Designs did not disappoint. I'm going to lift this sucker up. He is, obviously, you can see he's very fragile, and I don't want to hurt him too much, so I'm going to be very careful about this. Um, all right, this is number 171 of 900. There were 900 of these made, produced in 2009, so that's about 4 years ago. Sculpted by Seth Vanderbilt for Bowen Designs. Seth Vanderbilt, a very talented sculptor. I may or may not have already posted the X-Men Evolution Professor X maquette that I have, which he also sculpted, which he did an amazing job on. And it's just sort of like a non-conventional statue, in at least in a Bowen collection, or at least in a comic statue collection, because it is a statue of a character from a cartoon, X-Men Evolution. I'm going to get into that in the video for that one. But the point I'm trying to make is that the guy is super talented. He can make an amazingly detailed statue of one of the most amazingly intricate and detailed characters ever and make it look perfect. And he can also reproduce a cartoon character in 3 dimensions and make it seem as though that character was always in 3 dimensions and never drawn as a cartoon character. The guy is talented. I don't necessarily know what he's been doing lately, but whatever he's been doing, I hope he stops and he goes back to Bowen Designs, because we need more amazing statues by this guy, because his talent is just incredible. All right, Mr. Sinister. This is the very first issue that Mr. Sinister ever appeared in. This is one of my favorite covers too. I love it. It's like the Havoc cover. It's so beautiful. Um, I'm pretty sure this was the art in this book was by Mark Silvestri, who's a great freaking artist. Um, at least as far as I'm concerned. Some people don't like him, but they can go to they can go to hell, essentially. Go to hell. Um, I'm looking for the very first panel here, which is where he's introduced, and it is freaking great. Just give me once. Okay, here we go. Oh man, this is so beautiful. Okay, drawn by Mark Silvestri, created by Chris Claremont. Here we go. First panel of the comic. There he is, Mr. Sinister. So beautiful. Just such a great design. I guess it's. I mean, he's just kind of like a monstrous figure. What's beautiful about him is just the fact that he was. I guess I just have like a really strong nostalgic connection to the character and the design, and like I love that this was his first introduction. In this first panel with a close up of his face, just looking, well, for lack of a better word, sinister, right? Um, and I'm pretty sure that Mr. Vanderbilt, like, kind of, he kind of based his design of this statue on maybe Mark Silvestri's work. I actually saw this first panel in a. So there's a lot of like original comic art that gets sold online, and I try to stay away from that, because that is like that can get really expensive, and people People, there's some rich collectors out there that are collecting all sorts of comic book art that will never be available to anyone again. And I know that that first panel in this comic, this is Uncanny X-Men number 221. It's from September of 1987. The first panel that shows that close up of his face sold for like 5 grand recently, and I'm sure it's going to go up in value quite a bit over time. But it was one of those things where it was like, damn, like I would really love to have that, but I can't. I can't do it. I have to stick to statues and just stop there. Actually, it's a slippery slope to like bankruptcy. I think if one gets into the art, the original art collecting game, which I will never do. I will never get into that. I'd rather just like give money to charity because if I ever have enough money to give to charity, and if I'm faced with a decision to give to charity or buy comic book art, I would rather give to charity because I don't know. It's just like you're collecting drawings that are amazing, but you're just collecting them and putting them in a folder somewhere. I don't know. It just seems there's something that I don't like about it. Other people can do what they want, and I respect what they do, and I'm not criticizing them. Good job, folks. Anyway, back to the most amazing statue of an X-Men villain ever created in the history of mankind. Um, wow. Like that's all I can say about the statue. Wow. So I remember when I first started thinking about buying statues. I actually went into like this comic book store in Venice, California that sold a lot of comic book statues, and I remember walking around and just being really impressed and then thinking, has anybody created a Mr. Sinister statue? Because that would be awesome. So I asked the attendant at the comic book shop, and I think he was like unsure about it. Um, what had actually happened was that this guy was actually just released at that time, and I guess the guy didn't know about it, or maybe he had one and somebody else had sold it. It left me wondering: is there a Mister Sinister statue? Because that is a statue that I would want to have. Having gone to that comic book shop, that's where I first saw Archangel, the Archangel full size statue by Bowen Designs, and it immediately tickled my fancy. It immediately caught my attention, and I went back to buy it. And that was the first Bowen Design statue I bought. It was the first X-Men statue I bought. It was the first statue I bought. It was the statue that started this whole thing. But of course, I was left with this desire to find a Mr. Sinister statue. Of course, I went online. I did some searching. Bam, found this one. Saw that it was had just been released by Bowen Designs, I believe, maybe. Anyway, I'm pretty sure I found one on Amazon, and that is where I bought this guy from. And I remember when I finally got him in the mail, and I was just like, I was just floored. I was floored by how impressive it was, by how how perfectly it represents Sinister. It doesn't fail on any quality. It just every mark is hit that needs to be hit to make this the Sinister that an X-Men fan wants in as a statue. So it went for I think I bought it for like $250. I don't think people can find it for that much now. Right now it's May of 2013. I think it's gone up to like $300 to $400, maybe more. I don't know. It depends. It's hard to find him because I mean you can tell. I mean he's just a beautiful piece. He's exactly what you want. It's the only Mr. Sinister statue that exists, and I mean collectors like me are gonna scoop up something like this. I have never. The thought of getting rid of him has never crossed my mind once, and he's one of those statues that if I'm ever like in financial straits where I need to get rid of my collection for some terrible reason. He's one of those that I may never get rid of. He's the one that might be one of the last ones. If I might actually be willing to give up my home, like my actual shelter for just being able to keep him. No, I wouldn't do that, but he's definitely at the very top of my list. I don't know. It's hard again. Like there's so many great statues that I have that I love. It's hard to say, which ones are the best, but this one is freaking amazing, and you can see it's just fantastic. I've taken a lot of photos of him, but it's kind of hard to take some photos of him because because his arms are up, and unless you get him from like the front, essentially, you're not really gonna get the face. So, you can really only get like certain shots of him, and so hopefully in this video you're able to just kind of get a better idea of how impressive this is as just overall piece, and maybe even like get like sort of that in person impression that you would get from seeing him, in front of you. Um, oh man. All right, so a really important thing to mention is that this could have had like just a flat base and been as impressive as it is. But Bowen Designs decided to do something special with the base. They made like this really cool, like kind of techno organic setting, and I'm pretty sure like these glass cases represent like cloning chambers or something of that sort, where he's like growing humans, because he's like a geneticist, and his plan has always been to create the perfect mutant, and I think so that he can eventually get into use him in order to transfer his consciousness into him or her, sorry, him or her. It would um, so he's always been like looking for the trying to get the genetic material of Cyclops and Jean and like mixing them, and so he actually created Madeline Pryor, who is the clone of Jean Grey, who Cyclops married and then had a kid with, who wound up being Cable. So as I said earlier, he's central to some of the most interesting storylines that have existed in the X Men, and the statue reflects that. So getting back to the base, it's just beautiful. It's so well crafted. I remember there was somebody online that had the statue but didn't really know the character. They just like really loved the design of the statue, so they bought it and didn't understand what the base was. And if you don't know Sinister, then you're not really gonna understand the base. It's funny. It's got like an H.R. Giger sort of quality to it. That sort of techno-organic kind of industrial look. H.R. Giger being the guy that created Alien, the original design for Alien, that Sigourney Weaver fought. So he so they did a really great job of Bowen Designs did a really great job of sort of capturing like that sort of element that the geneticist element of Mr. Sinister and giving it that H.R. Giger look, which is perfect for like a sinister sort of setting that he might be working in or something of that sort. So so just the base itself is a work of art. Great base, and like the glass cases actually have glass on them. This is like glass or plastic or something, but it's somewhat translucent. It's like dark. It, I mean, obviously, a lot of attention was paid to detail here, and it paid off in a lovely way, in a perfect way. Super happy about the base. Um, all right, then just moving on to the actual statue. His boots, just there. I mean, every element of the statue is exactly as it is in Mr. Sinister's costume, and there was just so much attention paid to the detail. The boots are beautiful and perfect, shaped exactly as they should be. And then just going up, you have his costume that's like striped, and like all the lines are sculpted in and look great. And there's like a slightly sort of metallic quality to the paint that was used um, on this like very dark blue that was used to paint the majority of his body, which is just beautiful. And I love that it kind of gives off that sort of somewhat a metallic sort of um, effect, and it just makes him look that much cooler. But that it you could have this statue with no paint on it and no base, and it would still look amazing because it's such a great sculpt. Um, all right, so the torso is just great. Like it's like very muscular, which is kind of interesting. Like it didn't necessarily need that, but it works. It works really well. Like I guess Mr. Sinister's kind of like a strong guy, but I mean, he could have been a little bit like less sort of like jacked up, and it would have been fine. But I like that they did that. I like that they kind of gave him this like extra sort of uh, larger muscular build. It just adds more sort of presence and power to him as a character. He's not just a brain. he can go toe to toe with an X-Men, just fist fighting and just take them down if he needs to by force, by physical force. Like the guy's strong on many levels. So I like that they did that, and they did a great job of that. Just everything, like the arms, the torso, the legs. The anatomy is great. It looks great, and then on top of that, like I said, you have that costume that has all the lines in it that are sculpted in, which are great. Then you've got these gloves at the edge, at the end of his, obviously on his hands, which are very nicely sculpted as well. The hands are perfect. Um, but I mean, even though this is okay, before I go on to what I think is like the best feature of this statue, um, the second best feature of his statue is his cape. They could have done something really, really, really simple, just to kind of imply that it's got like this weird sort of shape, or you've got like all these like sort of, I don't even know what material. It might be metallic, like sort of curved things coming out of the costume that kind of make up this cape. Um, just a couple of sort of maybe loose ones, but they chose to just really go all out with it. Just really try to capture the design of Mr. Sinister's cape, which is what it is here. It's just a bunch of sort of loose pieces of fabric that tend to, I guess, have some, I don't know, there's something in them that makes them sort of firmer, and allow them to be kind of shaped the way they are. Um, and they captured it, and I love that they have the two tone quality where like one side is red and the other side is blue. It's just so beautiful. Thank you so much, Bowen Designs, for this. Thank you. This is like so freaking great. Um, so you can see, I mean, this is like very fragile. I've seen people selling these where some of these have actually broken off. So you have to be careful with them. I mean, they're packaged well and everything's fine as far as like, Bowen, making sure they're delivered properly to the collector. But I think if you're not careful with the statue itself, you could easily, if you knock it over or knock it against something, like maybe you could break one of these off easily. I've tried to be very delicate with it, and now I've actually got it in one of these Detolf glass cases, Detolf by IKEA. Just because I don't want to be dusting it that often. It's just there's just so many small like crevices and a lot of potential for it to be damaged, and it's one of those statues that it has been going up in price, is not easy to find now, and so I got to take extra special care of it. Nathaniel Essex deserves that. Anyway, the collar is fantastic. It even has like a unique sort of design that you might not be able to see here, but like it's got like cutouts at the top, so it's got like these like pointy points um, at the very top that are that just give it like like this extra sort of detail. It's extra detail. It didn't need to be there. You can kind of see it here it is. Um, it's just there's so many things that did not necessarily need to be there that they did because they actually care about making amazing statues, which just make this a legendary piece. Make it a legendary piece, and I'm super happy to have it. Um, Now, the thing that I think is the actual absolute best feature of this statue is his face. His face is so perfect. Like I've taken a lot of close-ups of it. There should be a couple of good ones on my blog post. It is Mr. Sinister's face. It's got like the razor edge teeth. He's got like the little sort of spiked goatee in the bottom of his chin. He's got like the mascara that goes all over his eyes, and then the red eye in the middle, and then he's got like that little kind of red diamond on his forehead. His hair, like the lines on his face, it's perfection. Perfection. And the paint job is fantastic because there's so much detail to the face that the paint job needs to be really good as well, and it is. It is. Oh man. So I mean, I mean, aside from like that first panel in the comic that I showed you guys, number 221, which is his first appearance. There's this really cool cover of Inferno, which I actually have him displayed with, and it has like his face there, and it's basically the face you see here. Basically, the face you see here. You see here. So just perfect. Hopefully, they'll introduce Mr. Sinister in one of the X-Men movies. He's going to require a lot of attention, and extra special, you know, approach. I think I think Bryan Singer can do it. Bryan Singer, who did the first two X-Men movies and who's doing the current X-Men Days of Future Past. I think he can pull it off. I hope he stays with the series and he brings Mr. Sinister in. I think there could be a really great story and a really great sort of visually rich um, film that could be made with this character at the heart of it. And I think it would be dark and fantastic. Um, Hopefully he's not in Days of Future Past because I don't want them to just throw anything in there. He doesn't really fit into that story. So hopefully Bryan Singer will stay on for another film and then bring Mr. Sinister in because that would be awesome. But Mr. Sinister has been treated really well in the cartoons, like the '90s cartoon. Mr. Sinister, obviously he was like the big villain in season two. Um, I remember at the end of season one, he hadn't been in season one at all, and I love season one. I remember at the very, very end, you have like Cyclops and Jean, and they're like sitting on a grassy knoll, and like Master Mold had just been destroyed, and everything was good in the world, and they were just like happy and kind of like reflecting on how good everything was, and then you cut to like this computer or like some sort of monitor where they're being watched, and you hear a voice, and it says the future. Sinister knows what your future holds. And I got goosebumps when I heard that because you didn't see Sinister, but you heard him. You heard him. He was like, Sinister knows what the future holds, and it was like, yes, yes, they're bringing in Mr. Sinister. Then they did. He was like obviously driving all the action in season two, and they drew him so well. They drew him incredibly well, and the voice actor that did the character was great. They did a really great job on that. And then he appeared a few more times throughout the series, like in a variety of different episodes. Every time, just being exactly what you want him to be, which is very close to actually what you're seeing here. So my hat goes off to the '90s X-Men cartoon for treating Mr. Sinister with the kind of respect he deserves. And actually, let me see. I don't remember if he was in X Men Evolution. I don't think he was, but in Wolverine and the X Men, they had him in there. Actually, a couple of good episodes, and the guy that used to voice Lex Luthor in the Justice League cartoon and in the Superman cartoon of like the late '90s, early 2000s, actually did the voice for Sinister in Wolverine and the X-Men. The one season of that show that was just phenomenal and tragic that they didn't continue. He did a great job at Mr. Sinister. They did a great job of designing him in that show as well. He's gotten a lot of really great design love in the couple of cartoons. I hope that shows the potential for how great of a character he can be in like visual medium, like uh, moving media, moving pictures media, video, film. Uh, so hopefully that's a. I'm just hoping that some film producer is gonna realize like Sinister needs to be in an X Men film, like I said, and we will see him done really in a really great way in some forthcoming X Men film. I'm gonna cross my fingers. Anyway, for now, I have this amazing statue which is Mr. Sinister. He's in my collection. He's well taken care of, and I couldn't say I couldn't say more good things about this statue. I don't think any statue producer could ever top this. I mean, Bowen Designs could produce another one, and like him on a throne would be really cool. I would buy that as well. If Sideshow did them, they'd have to do obviously a 1/4 scale, not a premium format. It would have to be a comic-ette, meaning it's just like a polystone sculpted piece of of art, and you would have to be very close to this. Like you can't really get too far from this because if you do, you're just going to disappoint people because this is perfection. Perfection. All right, folks, that's enough of me just kind of drooling all over the statue and sharing with it sharing it with you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope those of you that want it can find it. I hope those of you that have it love it as much as I do. And those that can't get it, like I hope you can just appreciate it for what you've seen here and just be okay with that. That's all I'll say about that. Thank you so much for checking out my blog and my video. My blog is X-Men Statues of Future Past.blogspot.com. My YouTube channel is Dr. Remy LeBeau's X-Lair. And as always, X in the box, ladies and germs, because ain't nobody checking me. I will see you all very soon. I have plenty more stuff to show you, so stay tuned. Bye-bye.